The midnight birth of a nation, India's full independence story, the long road to freedom, the story of India's independent day is not just a date in history, it is the culmination of centuries of resistance, decades of political struggle, and the resilience of millions who dared to dream of freedom. It is the story of an ancient civilization that, after enduring nearly 200 years under British colonial rule, stood up to reclaim its destiny. By the early 20th century, the Indian independence movement had already taken deep root. This was not ordinary struggle. It was one marked by an unusual weapon, not violent resistance under the leadership of the Indian National Congress and guided by the principle of Mahatma Gandhi. The freedom movement embraced civil disobedience and peaceful protest as its core strategies. From the Salt March to Quit India movement, the world was in an awe as a colonized people defied, one of the mightiest empires on earth, not with guns, but with the moral power of truth and unity. Yes, beneath the surface of this moral victory, tensions brewed. The British colonial government, exhausted and economically weakened by World War II, struggled to maintain control over a restless and politically awakened India. A fateful announcement on 20th February 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee made an announcement that would change the course of the subcontinent forever. The British government, he declared, would grant full self-governance to British India no later than June 1947. This was a watershed moment, right? The countdown to Independence Day officially began. But the British would soon learn, that in India, even time itself could not be controlled. So here entered Lord Mountbatten, to oversee the transitions. Lord Louis Mountbatten, was appointed at the last Viceroy of India. So Mountbatten was known for his charm and decisiveness, but he faced a monumental challenge, the growing political divide between INC, that we call Indian National Congress, and the Muslim League. The Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah was formed in its demand for a separate homeland for Muslim. The Congress, led by Nehru, Patel and others, resisted the idea, but the charm between the two sides, widened daily. So Mountbatten feared that if the British, stayed until June 1948, India's interim government might collapse entirely under the weight of communal strife. And so, in a bold and controversial move, he decided to advance the date of independence, by nearly a year. His choice was 15 August 1947, the second anniversary of Japan's, surrender in World War II. Here, the partition of nation here, on 3 June 1947, the British government announced its acceptance of partition plan. British India, could be divided into two separate dominations, India and Pakistan. This was not merely a political decision, it was a human tragedy waiting to unfold. Partitions meant, that the provinces of Punjab and Bengal, right, would be split in two. Entirely, communities, would find themselves suddenly on the wrong side of a newly drawn border. The Radcliffe line, named after its British architect, Cyril Radcliffe, would slice, through villages, fields, families, ignoring centuries of shared history. The price of freedom here, when independence finally came, it didn't arrive with unbroken joy. right? It came with the largest mass migration in human history. So millions of Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, filed across the new borders, right? So hoping to reach the safety of the dominion that aligned with their religion. So trains carrying refugees became ghostly symbols of both hope and horror, right? Many arrived at their destinations filled not with living passengers but with the bodies of those slaughters and root. The violence was staggering in Punjab, where the border cut through the heart of Sikh homeless, massacres erupted. So here in Bengal and Bihar, Gandhi's personal presence helped calm communal tensions, but even there, the atmosphere was totally fraught. Estimated suggest that between 250,000 and 1 million people lost their lives in the chaos of partition. So Gandhi's lonely vigil, while the rest of countries prepared to celebrate its freedom, Mahatma Gandhi chose not to take part in the official festivities in Delhi. Instead, he remained in Calcutta, right, fasting and working tirelessly to promote peace between Hindu and Muslim. For Gandhi, independence meant little if it was soaked in the blood of its own people. The night of 14th August in December, on the eve of independence, the Constituent Assembly of India convened for its 5th session in the Constitution Hall, right? It was 11 p.m. when Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the Assembly's president, called the gathering to order. The chamber was filled with a mix of solemnity and anticipations. This was the night when centuries of subjugation would end. Then Jawaharlal Nehru, soon to be India's first Prime Minister, rose to deliver that would come one of the most famous speeches in history. Tryst with destiny. Tryst with destiny. So his word carried the weight of centuries. Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny. And now the time comes when we actually shall redeem our pledge, right? Not wholly in or in full measure, but very substantially, at the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom, right? So Nehru spoke of stepping from the old into the new, the soul of a nation finding utterance after being long suppressed. He called for dedications to service of India and to the larger cause of humanity. So when he finished, the assembly members rose to take the pledge of service to the nation. So women representatives of India presented the Tiranga, the national flag, to the assembly. The first dawn of freedom, at the first light of 15 August 1947, India officially became a free nation. The domination of India was born, with Nehru as its first Prime Minister and Lord Mountbatten as its first Governor General. That morning, Nehru hosted the India's tricolor, above the Lahori gate of the Red Fort in Delhi. Okay. The air was filled with a patriotic song and the music of Ustad Bismillah Khan's Sehnai, which would become a tradition in future Independence Day, ceremonies, right? So here the celebration swept across the nations, from bustling cities to remote villages, with flag hosting ceremonies, parades and cultural events. The legacy of 15 August. So Independence Day, has since become more than a holiday, right? It is a reminder of sacrifices, resilience, and the cost of freedom. It is the day when the Prime Minister addresses the nation from the Red Fort, reflecting on the past and charting a course of the future. So it is also a day of unity, a moment when a tricolor flies high across the land, reminding every Indians of the midnight hour when their nation was reborn. So